Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who's a winner in every window. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I'll take that over the other logical one would be a man who's sulking because he didn't get his move. Taylor Rockwell. I prefer yours. It's a bit more optimistic to start.
I see what you're referencing there.
Yeah.
All right, so today's show, the main event is going to be January transfer window winners and losers. So we're going to get into that. But first, there was sort of weird breaking news before we sat down to record, in that it was a speech that Sunil Gulati gave in Philadelphia at the convention a little while ago now, but it's only really just sort of come to light. So, Taylor, you introduced me to this.
Yes.
What was it all about?
So, first off, it was at the coaches' convention that we were at, but it was at the U.S. Youth Soccer Hall of Fame induction ceremony dinner, I believe, which
Awards dinner is what it was.
There you go. Award dinner is the correct one.
Chicken or beef.
It was a closed-door event. I'm assuming they also had vegan, vegetarian options. Yeah. The MLS draft did, so I'm assuming U.S. Youth Soccer did too. But it was there, so it was closed doors as far as I can tell, which is maybe why it didn't get as much coverage. But I guess rumors had been circulating that this video existed. Alexi Lalas found it, posted it, it seems.
Some citizen journalism from Alexi Lalas.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we end up with is Sunil Gulati addressing this gathered hundreds, I'm going to guess, and essentially
youth soccer representatives.
Yes, and essentially kind of giving his take on some of the things that have been said by a variety of the presidential candidates. And it's pretty contentious at times. He kind of factually disputes some stuff, and then I would say emotionally disputes other things.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of genuinely kind of hard facts that he is in possession of from being US Soccer president that really does contradict some things that have been stated by other candidates. But added to that is more of a more emotional, personal defense of what's been going on at US Soccer.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, because I think at the end of it, it's basically him saying, look, things aren't as bad as they're being made out to be. And he goes back to that line of look, we lost one game. And then he does the and it was a bad game.
Did you not see the Costa Rica game?
Yeah, he kind of left that one out, didn't he? We lost a couple games in qualifying.
But that's part of his argument is that the reason all this is happening is because we didn't qualify for the World Cup. But then the best way to present that is to say, we only lost one game. Sunil Gulati is very good. I bet he was very good in Debate Club. Put it that way. You know
I think he definitely was. Yeah. Yes, he's very good at fighting straw man. That's for sure.
But I do sort of respect the idea that it's worth having kind of a fact check on everything that's been proposed by every candidate, and I think it's within Sunil Gulati's rights to do that, to step up and say, this is why this doesn't work, this is why we can't do that, etc. But I kind of can't shake the feeling that part of the problem with US soccer as an institution, we talk about maybe the arrogance that possibly cost us Jonathan Gonzalez. Part of that is represented by the idea that anytime there's a lot of suggestions about things that should change, you get the current president saying, here's why all that doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense, because even with specifically the Jonathan Gonzalez one, which is the first thing that he quote-unquote debunks, that no one called Jonathan Gonzalez. I don't think anyone, I guess maybe one of the candidates claimed that, but we know that's not true because we've heard Tab Ramos, and there's evidence of Tab Ramos calling Jonathan Gonzalez.
Yeah. But the real question is who called Jonathan Gonzalez around the time of the November friendly when all this kicked off, right?
Yes.
So that's very different.
Yeah, and so I
don't want to get too in the weeds on the Sunil Gulati video either.
That's fine, but I think we
could do a whole show debating this.
Yeah, but it ends up with him being yes, we could have done more, but here's the stuff we did do. And it sort of is by saying we could have done more, but not saying, yes, in retrospect, we should have had people dedicated to going to Liga MX games, like to have specific things that you could have done, rather than kind of always starting with a vague, more could have been done, but here's all the stuff we did do. But yeah, maybe more could have been done. Would we have liked to have done more? Yes. Could we have done more? Yes. Did we do a lot? Yes. That's what it always kind of ends up being.
It kind of represents the good and bad of Sunil Gulati, which is, we heard so many people talk about the wonderful things he has done for US soccer over the years, going back to his days when he just volunteered with the organisation, all the way through to, his decade plus as president. But it also, to me, represents why it probably is the right time for a change, even though Sunil Gulati is a very intelligent man who knows how all the levers work at US soccer.
Yes, and I do think, when we look back on his time in charge, it will be sort of with a lot of stuff got done, and yes, there were bad things. Were there bad things? Yes. But I think we will look back on it not necessarily fondly, but with like, yes, there were huge growths under his leadership.
It's turned into a Galati retrospective.
Kind of, but there were also things that should have been done better. And I think there's one candidate in particular who's saying that a lot of stuff should have been done better. He didn't name that candidate by name, but it was about as close as you can come to being like, I'm not going to name anybody by name, cough, cough, Eric Winalda. But I am going to say, and there were like a couple points that he went after, I think, that were particularly interesting. So we'll try to post a link to that video so people can check it out. And
do or do not. There is
do
no
or do
try.
not. Yeah, I guess that's a good one. Well, some people tried and couldn't because I guess there were some file format problems. But
got it.
Give it a watch if you want.
There we go. Shall we move on to today's main event?
Sure.
January transfer window is closed. It is February 1st, 2018. That means we can look back at the transfer window and we can arbitrarily declare winners and losers.
Oh, I think having said that, we don't want to go like deep into the underworkings of U.S. soccer. I love the idea of just generically being like, yeah, they did great. This club that put thousands of hours of thought into this player signing.
Well, that's giving some teams too much credit.
It's definitely giving some
Where
teams
would
too
you
much
like
credit.
to start, Taylor?
Let's start with winners, I think. Do you have any?
I got some winners.
I'm going to say Bayern Munich. Big winner for me in the January window. Spent $15 million-ish. They got Sandro Wagner, who is going to be a good backup striker to Robert Lewandowski.
And happy to be a backup, as I understand it.
That's the key thing, right? Because you've got to have somebody who's happy to be on the bench, maybe get 10 minutes here or there, maybe get a few starts.
Doesn't he have some Bayern pedigree as well? Didn't he sort of come up through Bayern, then leave, then come back? So yeah, all is good for Sandro Wagner. Yeah.
And then Leon Goretzka, securing him because he's going to be out of contract, so they get him on a free. That's a huge acquisition for a player who's probably going to be playing for Germany and could start for Bayern for like another 7 to 8 years.
Is the deal essentially just go heal with Schalke for 6 months, use their medical facilities, and then join us in the summer?
Basically. That's basically what's happening. And I think that's a pretty good outlay for Bayern Munich, which is what they tend to do.
I'm going to say...
In fact, I love that I talked previously about how Bayern Munich tend to get their business done very early. I like that they went ahead and got their summer business done in January. Yeah, right. Well done, Bayern.
I'm going to say a winner is West Bromwich Albion.
I agree. I agree with you.
It's more... I mean, it's very straightforward in that they got Daniel Sturridge in on loan, right, which is quite a low-risk proposition because they haven't paid money for a transfer fee. He may do wonders for them. They do really well with players on loan, actually. Lukaku was great on loan back in the day for West Brom. But then in addition to that, it seems there were at least two either bids or attempts to bid for Johnny Evans from Manchester City and Arsenal, which probably would have been a move he'd have been interested in, I would expect. They held on to Johnny Evans. Yep. So you can't get a better window than that in terms of holding on to a wanted player and bringing in a player that sort of is a higher profile than your club, with all due respect to everybody at the Hawthorns.
Yes, I think that's totally accurate. And then you remember the fact that they parted ways with Tony Pulis this season. So it is, I think, a little bit of a let's get some stability for the next 6 months, make sure we stay up. Then in the summer, we can look to really strengthen the squad the ways we need to.
Extra point, I believe... Daniel Sturridge is from the West Midlands.
Oh, there we go.
Right, because his uncle, Dean Sturridge, was sort of a very West Midlandsy player, stayed around the West Midlands. And I think if you hear Sturridge talk, he's got that Midlands accent. So West Brom is almost like going home for him.
All right.
Unless I'm completely wrong.
No, I think you're fine. I'm going to say one who maybe it's controversial because I've read a few different articles. I've seen them in the losers column a lot of the time is Liverpool. I think they did very well in this transfer window.
So I don't want to call them winners or losers. I just want to call them completers. Essentially, it's almost like they ran out of time in the summer to do the Coutinho sale and the Van Dijk buying, and they just did it in January instead.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
File for extension.
Yes.
That's what they did.
And maybe that's the way to put it because it really does depend on your perspective because I've seen it reported as like they got Virgil van Dijk, but they had to spend way more than they would have in the summer. Except that he wasn't really for sale in the summer, but they ended up having to spend more. But then they sold Coutinho and made more money for that. So it can be either way. And I think when you look at it...
That's about soccer inflation, right? Over 6 months, Van Dijk can cost an extra 25 million and Coutinho is worth an extra 50 million.
I would say so. But I think when you look at that squad, they're still going to have plenty of goals. They have plenty of attacking options, so much so that they could loan out Daniel Sturridge because he wasn't really vibing with what they were going for. But a huge hole was in defense. And we know they've got Naby Keita coming in, so that's sort of already addressed. And they brought in a person who I believe my co-host looks at as one of the best center backs in the league. I think that's a huge acquisition that can't be dismissed.
I'd also say, weirdly, RB Leipzig are winners because they held on to Naby Keita.
Yep.
Do you remember there was kind of an attempt by Liverpool? They've got that deal for the summer. Keita's joining Liverpool in the summer. There was an attempt by Liverpool to get him 6 months early. They thought maybe we'll just pay a little extra on top, get him 6 months early.
A little being like 15 million.
And I think Keita wanted to go. He seemed interested from what I understand. But Leipzig essentially said, we can do that, but it's going to be extortionate. So they either would have got loads of money or they hold on to Naby Keita for an extra 6 months, and they ended up... I mean, you can't lose in that situation.
I don't think so. I did want to add one final thing about the Coutinho transfer. I saw a couple people reporting that, or a couple headlines, that they actually got less than what was being reported, but actually it's the sort of thing that happens nowadays where you have a base amount, and then you've got, like, if he scores 10 goals for Barcelona, then it's going to be another 20 million. So it will end up being that.
It's a pretty easy bonus.
I mean, I don't think that's actually what it is, but it's like that. It's the same thing as Anthony Martial, where it was like when he scores 20 goals for Man United, when he makes 10 appearances for France. Like, it's stuff that's definitely going to happen, but it allows the buying club to say, oh, no, it was only 30 million instead of 60 million.
How about this? Loser, unfortunately, Riyad Mahrez.
Oh, yeah. I have loser Leicester, but yes, I'm with you on Riyad Mahrez.
So he obviously has wanted to move since the summer, and then it just hasn't happened for him. I think Man City were kind of interested in getting Mahrez as a Sané replacement, but the story was that Leicester quoted them £95 million, which even in today's market is a lot of money. So Riyad Mahrez didn't leave. Transfer window closes. And then today, the story is he didn't turn up for training. And the reason I'm categorising Mahrez as a loser, which feels really harsh, right, because I really like the player, is because I don't know that helps him get a January move.
I don't think it does. And the Daily Mail have reported that his friends are saying that he plans to never play for Leicester again.
So what's he going to do for the next 6 months?
I mean, he'll play for Leicester again, I think. And I don't think I've seen a lot of reports that, like, oh, the fans are really angry that he requested a transfer. It's like, no, they're not. He's already done that. Like, you know he wants a move.
I can understand the anger. If you've put in 2 transfer requests, one in summer, one right now, or we said he dusted up, a transfer request reminder is what he filed in January. And
it was the equivalent of, like, sending an email and then hearing no response. So being like, just wanted to make sure you saw this earlier email.
Just following up. And then the club really makes it hard for you to leave by quoting such a high price. I understand being super frustrated.
Yes. Speaking of that club, though, I did have them in the losers column for the situation with
LCFC?
Mahrez. Yes, because even though they kept this player, he's now going to be very angry and not want to play, and even when he does come back, he won't be as motivated. But on top of that, they loaned out Ulloa, Slimani, and Ahmed Musa. Yeah. Those are 3 forwards that they signed for a combined total of, I think, like over £50 million.
That's more a retroactive transfer window loser.
Yes.
Right? That means they spent the Conte money incorrectly back in the day.
Yep, pretty much. pretty much.
One final thing on Mahrez. The Chinese Super League transfer window is open until February 28th. That goes January 1 to February 28th. So my prediction is he either ends up playing for Leicester or he has to move to China. I mean, he'll become a very wealthy man, even though he'll become an even wealthier man. Yeah. But it won't be the move to a big team that he wanted.
Yet. That said, we've seen with Paulinho, you can move to China and then get that move back.
Yeah, the sort of luxury stepping stone that is the Chinese Super League.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to say another big winner, speaking of luxury stepping stones, is Barcelona. They finally got Coutinho and Yerry Mina, who's going to be starting for Colombia most likely at the World Cup. They got him for, I think, only like $15 million again. I think this came from a Yahoo Sports article, so that's why it's in dollars. But he's a guy who is going to be a consistent starter for them, if not in the near future, then in like 2 years from now, I would say.
Yerry Mina.
And in the meantime, they offloaded a bunch of players, I think 3 on loan, and then Javier Mascherano sold to China.
Deulofeu went on loan to Watford, right?
You are correct. Arda Turan loaned back to Turkey. There's a couple more in there, I forget. But basically, they got more money off the books. They got in players they needed. They strengthened their squad. They're already looking very good for La Liga, so I think they should be pretty happy with the way January turned out.
I like the idea that Deulofeu has a Spanish wardrobe and an English wardrobe. Like a lot more rain jackets in one and a lot more summer clothes in the other.
I think maybe an Italian one too. I think he was there for a cup of coffee.
That was more similar to his Spanish wardrobe.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Just a slight tweak. All right, I've got a big loser. There's always one team that gets punked in the January transfer window. This year it was PSV. Have you seen this story? I saw this on Reddit today. So PSV Eindhoven thought they were getting left-back Lumor Agbeninu on loan from a Portuguese team, Portimonense. A 6-month loan. They needed an extra left-back because they just sold one. They waited at the airport. They had the press release. They had the marketing team. They were going to do an unveiling.
They got a whole camera crew set up.
Of Beninu. And then they're sitting there waiting at the airport, at Schiphol, I believe it's called, the airport. And they find out that he's just gone to Lisbon and signed for Sporting Club de Portugal on loan. Can you imagine that being sort of the communication staff, seeing that coming in and being like, wait, what? What's happening? He's
You're
wearing
right.
green and white stripes?
Because you would have to find that out via social media.
He's not going to tell you.
Yeah, and and you're certainly not going to hear that from the other clubs. So maybe you'd hear it from whatever the Portuguese club that was selling. Maybe they would say, like, oh, by the way, he's not on that airplane.
Portimonense.
But still.
Yeah, which I checked is a 2-hour and 45-minute drive from Lisbon.
Yes.
So he probably drove there instead of flying to PSV.
There you go. No planes involved.
Oh, I just said Schiphol Airport. PSV is in Eindhoven, right? So it might be a different airport. My apologies to any angry Dutch listeners.
Well, while we're talking about the big losers of this window, I'm going to say, for less hilarious reasons, more not good reasons, would be West Ham. And they had
Henry?
Yes, they had a couple different reasons. Yes, so first of all, as you just said, head of player recruitment Tony Henry allegedly told an agent that West Ham wanted to limit the number of African players coming in. Not a very good look for him. I think he's been suspended. There's an FA investigation. But in the meantime, Andre Ayew demanded to be sold to Swansea. I think he put in a transfer request when maybe he wouldn't have done that in the past.
Yep.
And then I think
that deal went through, right?
Yes,
Ayew go? Yeah.
He is there. And then you have 7 players of African descent in that locker room who are not pleased, who have made that public.
I saw a tweet from, I believe, was it Toyota?
Was
Coyote?
the one about, like, proud to be African?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that is in reference to that.
So he's caused a huge problem in the West Ham dressing room, I imagine.
He is not the only.
Although it's not a split in the dressing room, it's just a split between probably the West Ham players and Tony Henry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, then you have Karen Brady. Did you see this story? She's the club VP. She wrote an article making fun of Leicester City's chairman, I think, last season for spending a bunch of money on a wine shop. She apologized. It seemed like things were okay.
Is that scuppered a transfer deal?
It scuppered the Islam Slimani loan. They would not even talk to West Ham. They instead loaned him to Newcastle.
Wow.
Because they were so angry. And then David Moyes basically didn't get any of the players he wanted. He really wanted a creative midfielder. That fell through at the last minute. So they are in a much weaker position than they were at the start of January.
Ooh, West Ham. All
Yep.
right. Should we move on to a winner?
Sure.
I'm going to say Everton Football Club are
Yeah,
winners.
I totally agree.
So they finally ended the Ross Barkley saga. He's gone. And basically Theo Walcott, I think, is going to be a great sign-in. And I think this is obviously a recency bias, but he played midweek, scored twice for Everton.
That's a good way to start.
As they won a game 2-1.
Yeah.
And both his goals are really, really good. I don't know if you've seen them. Have you seen the
I
highlights?
think we watched the highlights together,
Yeah, so the first one, it's a thing where he sort of drifts. I mean, he was playing on the right wing, but he drifts to the left side of the penalty area, essentially finds himself open. Ball is squared to him. He does that great thing where he opens up as if he's going to go far post, and then he just keeps on swinging. So he side foots the ball in near post. Looked like a classic finish from Theo Walcott.
Not bad there.
Lots of goals in those boots, I believe.
And they needed goal scorers. They got Theo Walcott. They got Cenk Tosun as well. He's expected to be their out-and-out striker, though if Theo Walcott keeps scoring. Maybe they don't need him. And then I think on deadline day, I didn't see it reported previously, so I'm assuming it was deadline day. They got the loan for Mangala, the defender from Man City.
They got him too.
I think he's going to play left back, which will be interesting. Or will be a deputy left back if the situation
He can just fit in
necessitates.
until Anthony Robinson comes back and plays next year.
Yeah. Or Leighton Baines comes back from injury. One or the other.
We'll see. What else you got?
I'm going to say another winner is Tottenham. Because they didn't do that much.
They just signed Lucas Moura.
They signed Lucas Moura for $25 million, but that is... I saw an article that was basically making the argument that it's very similar to the transfer of Son, where it was an undervalued player who was kind of forced out of a squad, not through lack of form, but just because they'd signed other players. PSG obviously signed some big-name players.
And some FFP to balance.
Yep,
right,
exactly. But you've got a 25-year-old for $25 million, I think it was, which is a really good value in today's market, who's going to come in, be exciting, but they didn't really disrupt their system. Like, I think he'll be able to fit in just fine and do what's expected of him. It's not like they bought a giant, slow target striker who suddenly maybe isn't going to be able to execute the press.
No, they've already got Llorente.
There you go. That's a good joke, Daryl. So I think it was a smart window from Tottenham just to kind of strengthen in one area where they saw an opportunity and then hold firm elsewhere.
I've got losers, American midfielders who needed minutes.
Okay.
Emerson Hyndman stayed at Bournemouth.
That's a good one.
I really was hoping he would go somewhere so we could watch him play for 6 months. He probably will maybe play 2 games for Bournemouth the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of Premier League
please
too, I think.
keep us updated. And then Gideon Zelalem. We'd heard that he was back in training. He was back running, I saw, in early December. It's now February, which means he probably is close to being ready to go. I was hoping he would, this may be a fitness thing, I was hoping he would be fit enough at this point that it would be worth him going on loan somewhere to play for a few months. But no word on Gideon Zelalem.
Man, that is really depressing. I mean, it's a very good point. I appreciate you bringing it up, but it is sort of because we...
Bringing it up to bring you down.
A little bit, because, I mean, that's been the case ever since Emerson Hyman was with Bournemouth. We wondered if he was going to be able to get minutes, and it still seems like that's going to be a question mark. But Zelalem, I legit forgot was even still at Arsenal, and it does seem like he could have gone out on loan. Yep. Maybe there are some still questions about fitness or
May is when that ligament damage happened.
Oof.
Yeah.
May
2017.
Can you tell me a winner so I can be happy again?
Actually, I've got one that I'm slightly confused about.
I'm wondering if it's the same team that I have.
So I can't decide if Arsenal
there we go.
are winners or losers.
Yep.
So they're definitely not winners and definitely not losers.
Yep.
I'm just not sure what it is. But their transfer window, here's how I look at it. It's been weirdly chaotic, and it feels a bit like they've just done some improv.
Yep.
It's been very ad hoc as opposed to like a carefully laid out plan.
Yep.
But at the same time, even though they did not do so well against Swansea, I really think that they needed a shake-up, and a shake-up is what they got. So it may all work out, or it may not. If it does work out, it's not through planning. If it doesn't work out, it's not because they didn't try. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm with you. Because, I mean, you look at the start of January, and it was Sanchez wants to move. Ozil doesn't seem like he's going to re-sign. Then you start to hear other players from the academy are starting to sign with other clubs around because they question the future. Jack Wilshere suddenly was another one who wasn't going to sign an extension. And it seemed really bad. And suddenly to get Mkhitaryan, who I think will fit their system and has a point to prove because it did not go the way it was expected at Man United. You get him, you get rid of Alexis Sanchez, which is obviously, in terms of like quality, it's a bit of a step down, but it's also Alexis Sanchez, who we talked about, didn't really want to be there anymore. You bring in Aubameyang, and that is a huge upgrade. And I think they did smart things to strengthen, at least in the attack. But then to your point about...
You also lose Giroud and Walcott, which is interesting.
This is definitely true. But then I still think that's like a net positive, although the Walcott loss probably brings it into a negative. But then, to your point about it being a little bit ad hoc, suddenly remembering like, oh yeah, we need center backs.
Right. So they did sign Mavropanos, but I think he's just gone and played for the U23s. It's not as if he's going to be a first team player. Coquelin left in the window, right, in January.
You're correct.
Didn't sign an extra central defensive midfielder. I guess they're going to just keep hoping Xhaka gets a bit better.
Yeah.
Moves around a bit more.
Should work. And doesn't get injured as well, because otherwise depth is an issue. But
so
then
it's a classic Arsenal window in that they haven't addressed the thing that everybody thought they should address, but they have restructured things up front. I am fascinated by what's going to happen with Lacazette and Aubameyang. I don't know if they're going to change formation, if maybe... I don't think Aubameyang is going to be effective as one of the wing strikers, because he's really, like, I think of him as an in and around the 6-yard box guy. Like, he's really... We talked about him pouncing on things in a really productive way. I think that's his strength. Lacazette is maybe a bit more mobile, so I think he might end up getting pushed out to a wing somewhere.
I think Lacazette...
But how happy is he going to be about that?
I think he's the new Walcott, basically, because I think they're going to try maybe both of them up front. I've come around to what's the BBC show that you've been recommending? BBC Euro Soccer.
The podcast, EuroLeague's football
Thank
podcast.
you, that's the one. Definitely soccer, not in there. But I've come around to...
I was going to say The Office.
I listened to that, and they swayed me on the idea
Mighty
that...
Boosh?
Yeah, all of those things. They swayed me on the idea that Aubameyang is sort of the hitting the reset button on Lacazette, and that maybe he is going to be the main man up top, and then Lacazette will get some minutes. Maybe they'll partner each other. Maybe Lacazette goes wide, and then in a couple of years, maybe he gets sold on to somebody else. Yes.
Final note on Aubameyang before we move on. Worth noting, from what I've read... He is Europa League ineligible.
Yep.
Because, obviously, he was with Dortmund.
I'm so happy you looked this up, because I read that and didn't understand how and forgot to look it up.
So here's why. It's because Dortmund were in the Champions League. If Dortmund had qualified for the knockout rounds of the Champions League, then he would not have touched the Europa League. It would have been fine. If Dortmund had finished bottom of the group and knocked out, they would have been fine. But because Dortmund, his former team, are in the Europa League knockout round, and Arsenal are in the Europa League knockout round, he is cup-tied. There is no way that Aubameyang can play in the Europa League.
There is not. But
and that may be Arsenal's best shot at Champions League football next season.
There is that.
Yeah.
We'll hear more about how Arsenal might cope with that when we get to the scouting report.
Okay.
But in the meantime, final note on Arsenal for me is that, I don't know if I said this already, so worth noting here, they did then re-sign Mesut Ozil to a contract extension.
For big dollars.
That was another guy who maybe we thought was going to be leaving. Now they've inked him. Now he'll be there. Now they've got a stronger offense.
Yep. All right, we haven't talked about Man United.
I was going to let you talk about Man United, to be honest, because I don't really know where I put them.
I think, on paper, I would say winners, because they got Alexis. Mkhitaryan wasn't doing well with Mourinho. That didn't seem like it was ever going to work out. Alexis Sanchez, like you said earlier, is an upgrade as a player. A motivated Alexis Sanchez should be a good thing. I don't know if I said this on the show or just said this to you over drinks, that I really think there's a weird historical thing when Man United need a number 7 with swagger. Like all their best periods are like George Best with some swagger, Eric Cantona with his collar up, David Beckham with his multiple haircuts, Cristiano Ronaldo with his stepovers, and then the downswing is, Memphis wearing number 7, Angel Di Maria wearing number 7,
Michael Owen
wearing number 7. Yeah, those coincide. They did okay in those years, right?
Yeah,
They're still in the league. But I think there is something weirdly in the DNA of Man United that you need a swaggery number 7. And so seeing Alexis Sanchez with that shirt somehow to me makes it feel more complete. And yet, we watched that game. We didn't watch it in detail, but that game was on the screen yesterday. United losing 2-0.
Yep. And from what I've read, he created...
Sanchez getting nutmegged by Dele Alli.
And created 0 chances. And also, I think this was, I believe I read, was the first game that Marcus Rashford has not featured in a Premier League game.
Jamie Redknapp was right all along.
Yeah, so there is that element of like, does he get forced out now? Do you force out a youngster to bring in Alexis Sanchez? It has been my concern about him fitting into that squad. We will see how it develops. Because obviously it's the second game that he's been able to play with Man United.
So I'm still saying winners, but with a question mark.
Okay.
Winners?
Well, while we're on a question mark of Manchester teams, I have Man City in the losers column, and I'm curious where you have them.
I mean, I don't have them here at all. I think they were plenty strong. They didn't really need upgrading, but Aymeric Laporte, I think, is... he could contribute this year, obviously, but he's also one for the future, right? As a ball-playing centre-back. They didn't get conned into paying £95 million for Riyad Mahrez, which I think would have been way too much. So, I mean, I just think they come out even. They're as good as they were before the window.
Except that when the window was opening, the full expectations were that they were going to be the ones to bring in Virgil van Dijk. There was an idea that they were going to hijack that deal because Southampton did not want to sell him. But I would say that one of those players is ready to play right now at a time when City probably need another center back who can play right now.
Right.
Then there was also the story that they were going to get Alexis Sanchez. They did not end up getting Alexis Sanchez. So then you look
how much did they want him is the question.
I think they wanted him. I think it ended up being that United offered more in terms of his individual salary and maybe slightly more on it. Well, I guess they didn't end up offering a transfer fee. So there you go. Maybe Arsenal just wanted that player. But either way, I think to want those two players, not get them, not get Riyad Mahrez, you're right that that's a lot of money. But still, I think there was strengthening they wanted to do because I think Pep Guardiola did not want to buy as much this summer.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that. But I still think the Man City transfer window should be judged as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
There is that element too. Then maybe one that is definitely broke and definitely needs fixing is Newcastle. Yes, this came from a Football 365 article. I'm just going to read you this quote.
Love
Did you read
Football
this too?
365. No, I just generally appreciate Football365.com.
As do I. Matt Steed, I apologize. The quote would be, 3 teams in the bottom half, Brighton, Southampton, and Swansea, reacted to the danger of relegation by breaking their transfer record. 5 of the other 7 spent some form of fee on signing a player. Of the other 2, Newcastle lost out to West Brom for Daniel Sturridge and were left scrambling to complete deals before the deadline.
Oh, Newcastle.
They didn't spend any money. They only brought in loan players. And that speaks to the uncertainty about the club's ownership, but also maybe speaks to the uncertainty about what's going to happen with that club for the remainder of the season.
That's it. The big transfer for Newcastle would have been transfer of ownership to someone not named Mike Ashley.
Yes, yes. But definitely not in a strong position, Newcastle, certainly at a time when maybe other relegation battlers did strengthen.
Do you have any other winners and losers before we move on to scarf-themed transfer window observations?
I've got 2 more losers. Maybe, again, these are question marks that you can agree with or not. I'd say Chelsea, because, again, they were also in for Virgil van Dijk. They also wanted Alexis Sanchez.
I think the Giroud sign is really good.
I do too. But it's basically, I think there's an idea that Antonio Conte wanted to strengthen across the board, and instead, especially on defense, and instead
you can't always get what you want. You can't always
get what you want.
You can
when you have a Russian billionaire owner.
You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes...
Oh my God.
You get what you need.
Second Rolling Stones reference in as many episodes, so that's good. So maybe you're right then. Maybe it does balance out that they get Olivier Giroud, they get Ross Barkley, they get Emerson Palmieri. I just think maybe he wanted a little bit more consistency right now, but I'm going to put them in like the null column then, where I have Man United. The other one would be PSG. And that was one that I had not considered until I read multiple articles pointing out that they needed to sell players. There are going to be financial fair play issues.
More went, as we said, they needed more.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they could have sold any of Javier Pastore, Angel Di Maria, Julian Draxler, Hatem Ben Arfa, all still on the books at PSG, which will hurt them when FIFA gets around to investigating why are they spending so much money and not sending any the other way.
They're going to have a big sponsorship deal.
Yeah, sure. I think so.
Okay, today's show is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier to US Soccer, Major League Soccer, the USL, and the NCAA. We put out the question today on Twitter. If you were to do a custom scarf, which is another thing Roughneck offers, you can design your own scarf. If you were to design a custom Roughneck scarf to represent the events of the January transfer window, what would it look like?
Wow.
What would it look like?
Yes. Mike Bate, that's Mike B8, says, I don't know what the design would look like, but the scarf you purchased couldn't be worn during Champions or Europa League matches.
That's like an Aubameyang cup tie.
That's pretty good.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Tyler Derbysh says, one side in which Daryl Grove, that's me, says, quote, January transfer windows are typically quiet, unquote. I did say that, didn't I? And the other side has the gif of Troy Barnes from Community. It's in the alternate timeline episode, right? Coming in with the pizza and the house is on fire.
Such a good gif. Omi says, tears rolling down Riyad Mahrez's face as he fails to break another window.
I really like that imagery of him trying to break a window every summer and every winter and it not quite coming off.
That's so good.
These windows are so well made.
That one really got me, I gotta say.
He's in a glass case of emotion.
It seems that way.
He's in a glass case of non-motion.
I mean, he hasn't moved in, 4 windows now, so he slowly is getting surrounded by a case.
Rupesh Sharma says, Liverpool fans looking longingly at Oblak and Alisson.
Yeah, that is the negative.
Those are 2 goalkeepers.
Mm-hmm, yeah. They did not strengthen there. John Adams, one side had dominoes lined up that looked like European money. The other side is Kellen Acosta looking out a rainy window, still dreaming about Europe.
Oh, that is happening. We probably should list Kellen Acosta as a loser, unfortunately, in the transfer window because he didn't get to go anywhere.
So we could put him on the scarf with Riyad Mahrez and have them both looking sadly out windows.
Maybe they should do a swap deal. I would love to see Kellen Acosta at Leicester and Riyad Mahrez for FC Dallas.
Same type of player, same quality. I don't see who could lose on that one.
They're both worth £95 million.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. If you would like to buy a Roughneck scarf for yourself, you go to roughneckscarves.com. You can see all the scarves they offer, and you can get 20% off anything there with the discount code Total Soccer Show, all one word. I should also mention that you can also use Roughneck scarves for fundraising for your organisation. You can sort of design a custom scarf with, Total Soccer Show or the name of your youth soccer team that you run or your local team on it. You can make a big order, sell it via Roughneck Scarves, and you'll make a really good margin to raise money for your organisation. The TSS discount does not apply to that, but that's because the margins are already so well stacked in your favour.
There we go. Well said.
We can't tip the balance anymore.
We cannot. So thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show. Now, Daryl Grove, so shall we get to some listener questions?
We shall. This is a fast-moving episode of the Total Soccer Show, right?
Somewhat. We're still half an hour in. First question I will let you answer comes from Greg Phillips. I'm a supporter of Mainz 05 in the Bundesliga. They are currently close to relegation and have sold or loaned 6 players this transfer window. Can you explain what happens to player contracts when a team gets relegated?
Yes, and the answer is sort of that.
I appreciate the question mark.
It depends on the contract. Mm-hmm. So, assuming that there are no clauses inserted, like if you have like a very basic, clean contract, when a team gets relegated, you just have the same contract.
Yep.
Right. The contract you had 1 year is just with the team. They go down to Bundesliga 2 or they go down to the Championship in England. Your contract, assuming it's very basic, is identical. If your team is smart and you're a team that has a relegation threat hanging over them, they think it's a realistic possibility, there will likely be a sort of a salary reduction clause, right? So in the event of relegation, your salary, instead of being $20,000 a week, is now $11,000 a week. There'll be something like that in there. If you're a very famous player and you're joining a relegation threatened team and you think, I'll play with you, but I'm not coming down there with you. I'm not Gigi Buffon. I'm not going down there. I'm staying up here. You can get your agent essentially to insert a relegation release clause, which means you have a minimum fee that is only a minimum fee that triggers your transfer, but only in the event of your team being relegated.
Yes.
It's essentially your escape hatch from a relegated team that you can build into the contract.
Indeed, but the issue there is that basically means you lose leverage. It gives the club leverage because now they can say, okay, fine, we'll give you that escape clause, but if you want that, we're not going to pay you as much. So generally, if you want that clause, you may have to sacrifice a little bit of money to make sure that then you're not stuck with a club when they go down.
I said you'd be a tough negotiator.
Oh, no, I'm a terrible negotiator. That's why the rule of thumb when we would go to the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul was that my wife, Margaret, was not allowed to eat before we went. I didn't make that rule. That sounds harsh. But it was basically...
To make her hangry?
Because she was hangry, and then she would just be like, no, I'm not paying that. Like, she would be real hangry. We learned that one day, because it always used to be that we were like, all right, be well rested, be well fed, so you're in a good mood, so then you can schmooze, but then you end up like really liking the guy, even though that's what he's trying to get you to do.
Right.
Whereas if you're in a bad mood, you're just like, nah, I'm walking out.
And you're just kind of satiated and compliant. It's like,
yeah. If you're cheerful, then you're like, I do want that lamp. If you're hangry, you're like, I don't want lamps at all. I want something that I can eat.
So let's hope for Greg's sake that Mainz had a hangry Margaret to negotiate all the player contracts.
Yeah,
Did you have anything to add to that? Anything that I might have missed?
It doesn't really necessarily relate to player contracts, just that what then also happens is if you do have that player who's on an expensive wage that you maybe can't afford because now you've dropped down a division, that becomes easy pickings for the clubs that did stay up.
That's an interesting part. Yeah, if you haven't been smart enough to put a salary reduction clause, especially if you're a team that didn't expect to get relegated. Like, I'd be very surprised if Manchester United have a relegation salary reduction clause. Maybe? I'm actually not sure now I've said that. You may really quickly need to get rid of some players, which means that you'll get some low bids because other teams smart teams will know they need to get that guy off the books. I'm going to bid half market value for them.
The second straight show, looking in your direction, QPR.
QPR.
I'm good with it. Next question?
Yeah, next question is from Max Powers. Max Powers says, if you were US soccer president, looking at you, Taylor, who do you hire to be the general manager, akin to Mexico's Dennis Tuclosa?
Sure.
Before you answer, could you explain the idea of the general manager and maybe the possibility of this actually becoming a US soccer position?
I can do that, and then you can clarify what it actually is. It's essentially a position that we don't have right now, but the idea being that basically you get somebody in who, I don't really like using this phrasing, but is a soccer person who has that background, who can speak to players, who can recruit young players, who can make sure that everybody's happy, they can like be in charge of scouting or whatever. It removes the U.S. soccer president from some of those decisions and kind of makes it into you have like running the boardroom, running the financial side, running the soccer side would be the GM.
Yep, I think that's roughly correct. I would also add that they're sort of they're an extra layer between the coach and the president and the board, essentially, because part of the general manager's job is often to, if not directly hire the coach, then at least sort of be very senior in the hiring process of the coach. I think it also, beyond sort of just chasing up youth players and all that sort of stuff, it's about logistics, right? It's about sort of which hotel do we stay at for the World Cup? Where do we train? Maybe you have some input into what stadium to play in. You'll also be a point of contact, an extra point of contact for the players. You're sort of looking out for player welfare. You'll probably be the go-between in terms of the negotiations between the players and the federation in terms of their bonus structure, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very important job, and I think it is a thing that needs to exist.
It is. So I have an answer for this.
Okay.
And it's a bit of a preamble here because I had a very...
It wouldn't be a Taylor answer without preamble.
There you go. I had a very instinctive answer, and then I was like, no, let me think about this more. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is the person I want.
What was your instinctive answer?
It's Dennis Tuclosa. That's who I want. That is who I think is the best candidate. And it is worth noting, he is not the GM for Mexico. He is the director of youth national teams for Mexican soccer.
Is he?
He is.
Yeah, I thought he was like a technical director.
You might think that, but unless he hasn't updated his LinkedIn profile, that is what he has there as his current job. So it would...
So youth technical director essentially is what he is.
Indeed. Yeah. So it would technically, more technical things, be a step up because it is a bigger position. You're not just focused on the youth side. But also, I mean, if you're trying to signify we're not going to lose any more players to Mexico, we're going to really change the way we think about things, we want to tap into the Latino market, maybe the guy who's been doing that for Mexico is the way to go.
Don't we risk sort of causing a bit of a rift with Mexico, with the federation, by hiring away one of their sort of favourite personnel?
This is me not caring because they stole Jonathan Gonzalez from me. Not from us, from me. I don't care.
From you personally.
Yeah. He did. You hurt me, I will hurt you back.
Very quick update on this. Gonzalez did make his debut for Mexico.
My fingers in my ears right now,
fingers in his ears. Made his debut for Mexico, came off the bench against Bosnia-Herzegovina. This thing has happened. The ship has sailed.
Yes.
This is an ex-parrot.
But it was Dennis DeClosa who was... I don't want to talk about these things. It was Dennis DeClosa who went to his house, who had this whole presentation for his family about how he would factor into things, about why playing for Mexico made more sense. And it's also worth noting that he's Dutch. It is not as though this is a Mexican... I think he might have a Mexican wife, but it is not as though he is like Mexican, born there, would never ever switch, would never ever go to another country. He has shown that he will do that, so maybe throw a bunch of money at him and get him to do that for the USA.
I get that approach.
Okay.
I prefer someone with a more intimate knowledge of how US soccer works, how American soccer works is what I meant to say, not the Federation. I've gone for Garth Lagerwey.
Okay.
So Garth Lagerwey is the GM and I believe director of soccer or president of soccer at the Seattle Sounders.
Right.
This man has a history of getting the logistics right, understanding the American soccer system inside out, and helping build really successful teams at Real Salt Lake and at the Seattle Sounders.
Okay.
There's also a recency bias here. I just listened to a Garth Lagerwey interview on Extra Time Radio, and just hearing him talk, he is so upbeat, positive. He just feels like an energetic man who can motivate people to do things. You know what I'm saying? Like, he seems like he would be a really energetic figure that would be all over the place trying to connect things and make things happen and, you know, really get things moving.
I think that's a really good shout. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
He also mentioned that he was very ambitious and he was open to any roles that he could be involved in, whether it be in terms of moving the game forward in the United States, whether it be with Major League Soccer or with the US Soccer Federation. So this is also a little, not conspiracy theory, but a suggestion that maybe there's an idea that Garth Lagerwey might be the guy to do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that because he's the one who got Clint Dempsey. Like, he made that move happen. I mean, a lot of other moving parts, but he can bring in those big names.
Did he get Clint Dempsey? That happened before he was at
Oh,
Seattle.
maybe it did. You're right.
Yeah.
Never mind then.
I think he was involved with bringing Ladero in.
I don't want this anymore then. I'm done. No, but he has that ability, but can also kind of identify bargain talent is the way I'm going to put that, which is also a good thing because then he's kind of looking everywhere for everything.
So I would agree with that, but I think if you just think of it as identifying bargain talent, how does that apply to the general manager role? I would, from what I understand about Garth Lagerwey, he's someone who looks at a situation and is looking for the extra 10%, who's looking for the innovative angle, who's looking for how to do things better and differently. And I think that's exactly the guy that should be general manager, because he would look at, for example, we always do January camp, we always do it in Carson, we always do this. That might be a guy who looks at that setup and thinks, okay, how do we do this slightly better? You know what I mean? So I think he is a guy that could find minor improvements all throughout how the national team setup is run.
But does he have a history of convincing Jonathan Gonzalez to do things?
He does not.
There we go.
I mean, you can convince Jonathan Gonzalez of anything. You'd have to convince FIFA to file a 2-time switch if you want Jonathan Gonzalez back.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's make things happen. One maybe possible candidate, and I wouldn't have suggested this except that I saw it today. Leander Sherlockens reported.
Leander Sherlockens, the journalist.
Yes, indeed. Why not? No. He reported that per Dutch public broadcaster NOS, Philadelphia Union GM Ernie Stewart is one of 2 candidates to become the new technical director of the Dutch Federation. Yes, I saw a lot of Philadelphia Union fans being okay with that because things haven't necessarily changed in the way that Philadelphia has been playing or succeeding or making the playoffs. But it does make me wonder, what do the Dutch see that we maybe don't, and maybe should Ernie Stewart be considered for that role?
Ernie Stewart would be a good shout as well, I think, yeah.
Yep.
So to give you an update on this, not an update, this is sort of what we've heard so far, is that they're essentially considering taking a vote and creating this position even before the new president of US Soccer takes office. So I think this is a thing that whoever wins the election on February 10th, this is a thing that is probably going to happen.
And since I think we'll probably hear about it with that in mind, the other one that I've heard people mention is Eric Winalda, that if he doesn't win the presidency, that maybe that's a position that gets created where he can do all of the things we've talked about and kind of be his boisterous self in a role that doesn't have him overseeing all of U.S. soccer.
Okay.
So that is one possibility, theoretically, if he doesn't win.
All right. So one final thing I want to say about the general manager position is I like the idea of it, but I do worry that it just becomes the next person who's in trouble when things go badly for the US, specifically for the men's national team.
Yeah.
Because the thing, when we lost to Trinidad, didn't qualify for the World Cup, the first reaction of most people, obviously people knew Arena was going, it was Sunil out, right? Because you've got to blame someone. I think it essentially would just give the next president someone to pass the blame down to in some ways. The problem is, if you are really confident in your general manager, it's part of a long-term vision, right? Like Oliver Bierhoff has been the German general manager for a long, long time. If we keep making the general manager the scapegoat, it's suddenly becomes pointless in many ways, right?
Yeah.
You lose that long-term aspect.
But we're still worrying about a thing that like hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
It hasn't even been established.
That's
so
how I live my life.
Let's wait and see.
That's how I live my life.
Maybe there is also the argument to be made, though, that like that is a sort of like separation that needs to happen. That maybe it should be the GM who gets more pressure because I think people would agree that like Sunil Gulati has been very good on the business side of making money for U.S. soccer. Well, some people
Not everybody
maybe they would
that.
say that he should have made more from the TV. But I would say that is like maybe his strong suit. And then you have the argument of like, but maybe in terms of hiring coaches and overseeing player development, maybe that hasn't been the greatest under his tenure. But if you have somebody whose job is specifically that, maybe that goes a little bit better.
This is possible. Again, we'll find all this out very soon. The election's coming.
It is.
February 10th. That is, 9 days away?
Yep. I think it's February 12th. Just kidding.
February 10th.
Just kidding.
I will come across this table. So, just side note on this. I'm ready for it to be over.
Agreed.
I'm ready for the election to just happen, and whoever's the president is the president.
Yes. As long as that's how it goes down. But we'll see. And we'll be watching that live broadcast of the election, as we've said.
Well, thank you to Greg and to Max for today's questions. If you'd like to ask a question, go to totalsoccershow.com/questions, fill out the form, and we'll add your question to the pile.
Sounds like a plan. Final segment on today's Total Soccer Show is the Scouting Network.
All right.
We have 6 scouting reports to get to, starting with Brad Payne scouting Shaft Brewer, the 18-year-old American left winger. After scoring 45 seconds into his debut for the Leipzig U19s against Osnabrück, there were disagreements between Shaft and RB Leipzig's management. We don't know the details of what went wrong, but we do know he has the potential to be a great player. However, Shaft returned stateside after receiving a call-up to the January camp for the U19s, U.S. U19s, that is. He will be a great addition to any club's youth system. He just needs to find a home.
So Shaft Brewer looking for a team right now.
Indeed.
John Ramaswamy is scouting Sam Rogers, the 18-year-old American centre-back for the Seattle Sounders. John says Sam is in training camp with the Sounders in Arizona and got some game time with the first team this past weekend, albeit I don't know how to pronounce that word. Albeit. Not too much, as he only played 6 minutes at the end of the first half in Sounders' 3-1 win over Club Tijuana U20s. Sam was interviewed for the Sounders official website today and talked about growing up as a Sounders fan and the excitement of playing for the hometown team, as well as his plans to try and break into the first team this season. So he said all the right stuff, basically.
Yep, basically.
He says if he's not able to make the MLS squad, he'll play with S2 and do whatever it takes to get up to the first team.
James Robinson scouting John Requejo Jr., the 21-year-old left-back on loan at Club Tijuana from Dorados de Sinaloa for now. John Requejo Jr. has begun a trial with DC United, according to Stephen Goff of the Washington Post. Requejo was not getting minutes at either Tijuana or Dorados, and DC does not have a great deal of depth at outside back, so this is a big opportunity for the youngster.
Ed Di Horatius is scouting Federico Bernardeschi, the 23-year-old Italian midfielder for Juventus. Fede came on as a substitute in Juve's 2-0 win over Chievo and got the assist for the first goal, albeit against a 9-man Chievo squad. Is there an albeit conspiracy against him today? He again subbed on in Juve's 1-0 win over Atalanta, in the first leg of the Coppa Italia semi-final. Unfortunately, he suffered a knee injury in that game and wasn't able to train the following day.
Actually, it's albeit he wasn't able to train, but that's fine. Alex Warren scouting Eddie Nketiah, the 18-year-old English forward for Arsenal. This is what I promised earlier. During the whirlwind transfer window, Eddie was an unused substitute in Arsenal's last 4 games, including 3 in the Premier League. The arrival of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang likely pushes Eddie back to the starting lineup for the Premier League 2 side, but with Aubameyang being ineligible to play in the Europa League and the departure of Olivier Giroud, Eddie could get some time in that competition.
You mean Olivier Giroud?
Yes, excuse me.
I'm telling you before we get the tweets.
Giroud.
No, you're overpronouncing it.
Giroud.
Brandon Colvin.
Olivier Giroud.
Brandon Colvin is scouting Brahim Diaz, the 18-year-old Spanish left winger for Man City. Brandon says, recent injuries at City have provided Brahim Diaz with late game minutes against West Brom and Newcastle in the Premier League and Cardiff City in the FA Cup. Unfortunately, Diaz's aggressive, skillful dribbling left him on the receiving end of dangerous tackles from Cardiff's Leroy Saint-Assassin, I see what he's done there, Joe Bennett, and most recently West Brom's Matt Phillips. Diaz escaped both challenges relatively unscathed, putting this especially good shift in his 13 minutes against West Brom, including several smart runs and a shot on target. If Diaz can avoid flying studs, it seems his growing confidence will result in a larger squad role in the coming weeks.
There we are. So thank you to
Team
Brandon.
Phil Foden.
Thank you to Brandon, Alex, Ed, James, John, Brad, and Olivier Giroud for those scouting reports.
I hope you get a million tweets. And I'm not copied on any of them.
It's Daryl at TotalSoccerShow.com and at Daryl Grove on Twitter.
Oh, seriously, it is at Total Soccer Show on Twitter. I've just realised we haven't let people know about our Twitter for a long time. I'm assuming a lot of people know about it. But if you want to find us on Twitter, it is at Total Soccer Show.
And our MySpace is non-existent.
Defunct. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Oh, I made myself chuckle with that one. Thank you, Dale Grove, for doing the same.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow with another Total Soccer Show.